I can't do it.
Okay.
We'll do it live.
Okay. No.
We'll do it live. It. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Thing sucks.
Yeah, here we go. Monday, January 6th. Here we go. It's the Daily Puck Drop. We do it every single day, Monday through Friday, live every day at 10 a.m. Whether you're watching the stream on YouTube, listening on the PuckSports mobile app, watching on X, and if you're doing this all later on the podcast, when you're up there on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform, Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast, of course, PuckSports.com. Thank you. Remember, when you're there, please like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. It all helps the program. All right, here we go. No Jim Moore today, the go-to guy. He's so upset that Ryan Grubb was fired that he messaged me earlier this morning, said, I'm not going to do it. In protest, in solidarity with Ryan Grubb, I'm out. I'm not going to do it. I know the fight song of Washington. I'm a diehard Husky, and I don't like it. I don't like the fact that he got fired. So you know what? Damn it, I'm out. Or he's sick. I think he got the same thing I had last week, which I think is going around everywhere. Montezuma's revenge is what I like to call it. We are on day 6 now, I think, of finally being okay. I think I feel a little bit normal now. Boy, we got a lot going on today. I was going to say, I even forgot to change the rundown, which I did earlier. I could probably just do it on the fly. Ryan Grubb decision. Well, that decision's been made. We'll talk about the Seahawks season. We'll be heavy today, obviously, in the Seahawks. So with Jim out today, we've called Lofa Tatupu off the bench. So Lofa will be joining us in about 8 minutes or so, 10:10. We'll spend a good chunk of time with Lofa breaking down a little bit of the game yesterday, but really just the season in general. And then we'll get his thoughts on Ryan Grubb. Did they make the right decision in firing Ryan Grubb? Chat room is open for you if you are on the stream live on X and on YouTube. So fire up comments there, questions. We'll pop them up here, and we'll throw them out to Lofa throughout the show. Did they make the right decision in getting rid of Ryan Grubb after just one season? And I said this on X earlier. What a 12 months it's been for Ryan Grubb and Kalen DeBoer. This time last year, right? I mean, they haven't played in the championship. When was the championship game last year? Right around this time? Or maybe a week after? They were sitting on top of the football world, leading Washington to the national championship game. Hottest head coach in football, hottest offensive coordinator in football, leading the hottest offense in football, really. And then, of course, everything changes. They lose, but then they go to Alabama, and you're like, oh, my God, here they go. And then, Grubb, I can't even remember how long Grubb lasted at Alabama. Not too long. And then you get the photo from Dino's, and there's new head coach Mike Macdonald having beers with John Schneider. My God, there's Ryan Grubb. And everybody advocated to hire Ryan Grubb. Today there can be no revisionist history, by the way. Not allowed to have revisionist history unless someone can timestamp something and go, this was a mistake from the get-go. Because I don't remember anyone thinking hiring Ryan Grubb was a mistake. So we'll get into that. Obviously, decisions on Geno Smith, D.K. Metcalf, and, of course, we wrap up every Daily Puck Drop with Hey, What the Puck. Curtis Crabtree and Tim Booth will join us probably a little after 11 o'clock. They join us on Mondays for the Ground Puck Seahawks Podcast. Little after 11 o'clock, because what's happening right now, which will be interesting to follow social media here and follow Twitter, is right now for the next hour is the locker cleanout day. So right now players are cleaning out their lockers, which they just stuff everything in a black garbage sack and then go on their way. So it's going to be interesting to see the reaction from all of the players, but specifically the offensive players, about the decision to get rid of Ryan Grubb. He seemed to be very popular among the players, very popular among the quarterback. We shall see what the comments are coming out of the locker room as Tim Booth and Curtis Crabtree and all the reporters are covering the locker room cleanout day. All right, Daily Puck Drop every single day, 10 a.m. We go fast and heavy with all the topics here for about the next hour and a half or so. We are broadcasting from the Limbach Lumber Studios Of course, Bill Limbeck Lumber has been a proud sponsor of PuckSports for the last few months. Contractors, they want to tell you they got free deliveries, everything from whole house packages to homeowner DIY project, the largest stock moldings in the Northwest. Old school service because they've been doing it since 1930. Give Limbeck Lumber a call, 206-782-3487. Visit them online at limbecklumber.com. Thank you to Limbeck Lumber. Couldn't be doing this show every single day without their support. Thank you so much. Social media platforms, follow on everything. X, Instagram is Puck Sports, and Blue Sky is the same thing. And then we post all of our video clips, content up at TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. And then on TikTok, you can follow Puck_sports. Also, if you haven't done so, 2025, it's a new year. Sign up to be a Puck's Posse member. We have our first edition of Dynamic Duos is out with Graz and Gas. Hour and a half, almost an hour and a half of them telling stories, how they came together, their story, their friendship, and all of that. That's up there for Puck's Posse members. $5 a month, that is it. You get full VIP content to everything that we do daily, but all of the extra content we do as well. Coming out next week is a sit-down with O'Day football coach Monty Kohler that will come out next Monday. And again, just there for Puck's Posse members. Please sign up today if you have not done so. Again, a reminder, Jim's not here today, but his Monday, Wednesday, and Friday appearance is brought to you by A Clean Streak of professional window and exterior cleaning services. So thank you to Brian Turner for doing that. All right, so what do we think? Ryan Grubb out. Yay or nay on the Ryan Grubb firing? It is seemed to be, I don't know if it's split on how people feel about it. I think there's compelling arguments all across the board. I'm not going to sit there and die on a hill for Ryan Grubb and say, this was the biggest mistake of all time. And they're going to rue the day that they ever did this to Ryan Grubb. I will say that I do think it's a mistake to fire him after 1 year. I do think there were some learning curves for Ryan Grubb. I also think there were some learning curves for Mike Macdonald as well. And we can, again, look at Mike Macdonald's defense against really elite offenses and to see what they did. Now, you had a career year for Geno Smith. The turnovers certainly were a problem. A career year for JSN. D.K. Metcalf fell short of 1,000 yards. I'm curious for those who advocated to get rid of Ryan Grubb. Do you give him any credit for Geno's season? Do you give him any credit at all for what he did for JSN? Or are you going to say, no, that just was, they just schemed it up for him and that was just the result of it? Clearly, this is a firing because they could not mesh their personalities together. They could not mesh what they wanted as a shared vision. And that just comes down to the running game. The running game, again, just did not improve from last year to this year. Last year, they were 28th in rushing attack. This year, they were 28th. Let's see, attempts last year in terms of running the ball, 31st in attempts. This year, 29th. It is also weird, the team that they played yesterday, and the Rams have more attempts in terms of running the ball, but they only average 5 yards more rushing this season. The Rams did in Seattle. That's it. 103. I think people have this. Well, I don't know what your perception is of the Rams, but I don't know if it's just run first heavy offense. But they averaged 103 yards on the ground. Seattle averaged 95. They did it mostly with one back in Williams, whereas Seattle had a dual head monster, I guess, had out of necessity because of the injuries to Ken Walker. I don't think he was perfect, by the way. I think there were certainly some times and some things that he did as a coordinator that you're like, God, that didn't make sense. But I also think there were some things that were very creative he did offensively that I thought was very unique and refreshing in NFL circles. I just think there's a lot to peel away when we start criticizing an offensive coordinator. I'm not smart enough to sit there and drop plays and counter some defensive coordinator and know what schemes they're running and know what the exact route was and all that. And frankly, many of you watching and listening to this right now, you're not qualified either. Okay, I'm not qualified. I do think it was an overreaction from a lot of people to say, no, he's just an absolute failure. Okay, well then tell me. Go into deep reasoning why he was a failure. There was it because of the offense? Was it because of the red zone issues? How much was that on him? How much was it on Geno Smith not making the right decisions in the red zone? I mean, the quarterback has to have some blame in this whole thing, right? Does he not? I don't know what plays he's checking in and out of. Neither do you. The offensive line, I mean, how successful, how much can we judge an offensive coordinator if the offensive line has the issues that they're having? I mean, they couldn't run block. They really couldn't block at all. The reason they had to pass so much is because it's just easier to pass. It's easier to get the ball out fast. And everyone knows that if you have a suspect offensive line, the best thing to do is to pass. That's why they created the air raid, folks. That's why Mike Leach created it, because he couldn't run the ball. Because when you have smaller or a poor offensive line, it's just easier to pass block and get the ball out fast. So we'll see. I mean, it'll be a monumental decision here for Mike Macdonald, and will go a long ways in where he goes as a head coach. I mean, he obviously wants to find someone that shares, more of his vision of how football should look, and that's a run-first system. Question would be, you met with Ryan Grubb. You interviewed him. I'm curious what convinced you at the time to make that hire. And I've seen this all, that he's a very pass-heavy coordinator with his time at Washington and Fresno State. I would correct a little, people. I would go back and actually look at his time at Fresno State. It was much more balanced than people realize when he was the coordinator there at Fresno State. All right, joining us right now, emergency visit from the great, the one and only Lofa Tatupu, who joins us here. And it's all brought to you by 1937 Farms, family-owned and operated craft cannabis tucked away in Snoqualmie Valley. Visit 1937farms.com. Follow him on Instagram as well. Also, Savage Brewing Company and Lofa's own podcast, the All Day Podcast. He was doing a show. You were doing a podcast or a show, live show during the game yesterday. You are nonstop busy. I appreciate the time today. Jim did not want to come on and do the show today because he's so upset about Ryan Grubb being fired.
Is that okay? I thought it was a sick day or a vacation. I didn't know which it was. Happy to fill in, though.
Yeah, he's sick. He's under the weather like I was last week. Let's just start with the big news. Surprised Ryan Grubb was fired.
Am I surprised? Yeah. 1 year, I don't think is enough time to really know what someone's capable of, especially, making the jump from college to pro. I thought he did a decent job with the circumstances. I was just listening to the segment before, and you said with the offensive line, and I don't think we're terrible with the offensive line. I think we've never been healthy. For the last 2-3 years, we haven't been healthy. And so when you have those combination of guys going in and out, it might make your game plan a little simpler to get them comfortable, right? Because you want them comfortable. You can only do what you can with what you got, right? And but I do think we have the line. We just never healthy. So, but the one thing was when we made the changes at the bye week, I believe that put everybody on notice, right? Like not just players, but like, hey, because it's the players that go, then it's the coaches when there's any kind of a rebuild or anything, and we're always aware of that when we're in the industry. But so I was surprised that, yes, at the timing and just only a year, we did finish 10-7. But I thought he found balance. The Arizona game in particular, when we went on the road, incredible balance, incredible creativity. The double pullers, I was just asking for one guy to pull. He pulled two guys. And I was like, and that's what I was talking. Remember, we were talking about, I was like, yo, I've never seen a puller go downfield 7 yards and not have a body to block. I go, that was incredible design. That's to Grubb and, the offensive line coach. And so, but we just didn't lean on it enough. And I feel like, because we're creatures of habits, we have tendencies. That's why I studied my opponents, but I studied the offensive coordinators more than I did the players that were playing.
Do you think he was too predictable as an offensive coordinator?
At times, yes. Even when I did the live show yesterday, you can go back, there were several times when we lined up and, I just said, oh, we're getting under center here. I guarantee you it's the play action and throw it. And it was. And because why? We never get under center. And when we do, it's the play action and throw it. And so, and one was a sack and and it's actually a very good design play. But if they know that you're not running it, there was nobody brought up. No one got fooled. That's why Geno held on to the ball, and so it's there were times that he was predictable, and there were times where, to your point, we don't know what play in the red zone is getting checked in and out of a pass or a run. So yes, Geno does have some blame in some of the red zone issues, right? If he's going to the line, and there was what I really had a problem with, and you hear me say it over and over. If you watched it, the live was like 4 hours, so don't go back and watch it.
Oh my God, 4 hours, no breaks,
all day, baby, all day.
Oh man, where'd you pee? Did you have the Gatorade bottle?
Halftime, I did. But so if you go back and watch it, you'll see me continually say, I go, we're getting out of the huddle with 10 seconds left. I go, it's going to be an illegal procedure, illegal shift because of all the motion we have. We're not going to be set. And I think we got one or two of those. But and I looked at the opposite. Jimmy G, yes, he's a veteran quarterback, but he's the backup over there hasn't played in a long time. And they were already at the line with 18 seconds on average. 18 seconds. That's plenty of time to assess, make a decision, check, and go. And so that was just one of the other kind of things that stood out a lot over the season.
But that's interesting you bring it up because that's been a problem for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a problem with Russell, and that certainly was a problem last year with Geno. They were constantly getting up to the line of scrimmage with even less than 10 seconds and then scrambling, taking a legal procedure, taking a delay a game, or calling a timeout.
Yeah, and I think a simpler plan, right, might have done better. Like, hey, it's design run or design pass, and who cares if they know my guys have one play in their mind and they're going to execute.
Do you agree with the firing?
No, because I don't think 1 year is enough, right? Like, he showed me his ability to pivot and adjust. Now, I would go back and ask him why he didn't stay with that, as he found, I thought it was that Arizona game just stood out. Of all the games, it was just beautifully called. Geno I don't think one of the few games he didn't throw an interception, right? And then everybody's clamoring for, well, why didn't we take any shots downfield? We didn't need to. We were running the ball for 7 yards a clip. It was a perfectly balanced attack that kept the defense off guard. And then we had most of our success with not the no huddle, but the hurry up tempo, they call it the muddle huddle.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just didn't understand when we were stagnant, we didn't go to that more. And we did it on a couple drives. We did it for 2 first downs, and then we stopped yesterday. And I was like, okay, why are we stopping? It's working.
One thing I've heard, again, I'm not educated enough to sit there and get up on some whiteboard and start designing plays and having you and me having a debate. Well, here, who has the pin last? And you go, and then I go. I mean, I'm an idiot. I don't know. There's times, like all fans that are probably watching and listening to this right now, there are times that I think even just the football fan can go, well, that doesn't make sense. I think there was a play yesterday. They ended up throwing on 3rd and 1. You remember they tried to hit Lockett, I think, down the right sideline. I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense to me. You're running the ball pretty well. You're averaging 5 yards a carry. Just run the ball. I thought McIntosh and Charbonnet were doing a great job. So I'm like, I don't get that. I'm with you. This is my issue with all of football. This is old man yelling at the clouds. All right. You ready for it?
Yeah.
If I could make one change in football, I would make shotgun illegal. I'm so tired of the shotgun. I'm tired of it all the time. And I think these coaches are to lean on shotgun way, way too much. And so if I was commissioner of all of football, I would get rid of that. But in terms of him as a play caller, and as a philosophy moving forward, or the philosophy that he had there with Mike Macdonald, I just want to know, how can you execute something if you really truly don't have guys up front? We talk about all the offensive line issues, Lofa. Right tackle was in and out because of Abe Lucas. Right guard was a mess, and then your center was a mess. Yeah, that's 3/5 of your offensive line.
Yeah, absolutely. Well. And he did with the quick screen. I thought his creativity at times, the quick screen, Sometimes I didn't always agree with who the quick screen was to. I thought like you only had JSN's like really the only guy. When we had him, Laviska Chenault's more of that guy too, like yards after contact and just almost like a running back style. Charbonnet actually had some success. Kenny Mack would have been the perfect weapon for that. And so putting guys in position to highlight their strengths, I think, is really what a great coach does. But yeah, you have the offensive line issues. Well, if you go back to the Arizona game that I referenced again, that was his first start, I believe, maybe first or second. And so, and he looked great. And so I don't know, because it's like we brought out the pullers, and then I think we tend to overthink it as coaches. It's like, oh, that won't work again. And to me, that was everything we talked about when we played the Bears. The first drive, we had 7 out of I think the 10 plays were runs that marched it all the way down the field. That's too many runs. I think we only repeated one of them twice. So the other 5 were actual different runs of a different variety. And that's too much to go over on the sideline. You're not going to – at halftime, they had time to adjust, but we could have just ate running the ball on them.
When I was rambling about why I hate the shotgun, I lost what I was going to ask you. So then I rambled and went to the offensive line. What I was going to ask you is, like, I can't sit there and have some debate with you on a chalkboard like we were saying. I'm curious from your perspective, because I've heard this from others who've played the game and have seen the game for many, many years. Did you see a lack of, I don't want to call it creativity, but did you see a lack of, hey, here's the same play or the same formation we're going to run out of, but then there's various plays that are out of that formation. So you don't know what's, as a defender, you don't know what's happening. Hey, we're lining up under center, and we've got that same formation. Last time they did this, they threw the ball, but now they run the ball. Did you see that lack of I guess, patterning as for him as an offensive coordinator?
Yeah, the old setup plays, right? I did see, but it was more out of the specialty plays. We ran that trick play that we ran against Detroit, right? That was beautiful. But then the way he got to the quick screen, which just got deflected it was a great effort by the kid to get up. Geno just has to make a better pass, just dump it over the top instead of a straight throw. They usually ran that out of a trips formation. Well, here they have Lockett off as the lone receiver on the left side. JSN was in the backfield, and then they motioned across to create a trips-like scenario. And then it was a dart out and then angle back in for JSN to get the quick screen. And when I watched it, I explained it to everybody. I was like, look, that was masterful play design. And it was out of a situation formation just like, but as far as consistently doing that, I did not see that. But I tell you, he could draw up some really pressure plays. The one where Sharps was flaring out of the backfield and Fant on his nice reception down oh my God. To everybody in coverage, the flat defender is like, oh, this is a screen. I have to defeat this play. The only problem is he didn't get hands. The defender didn't get hands on Fant to find out what the play really was. And they flooded the zone. They ran off the corner. And then now you have a high-low situation with the flare and then the guy going vertical. And that stresses a defense. And so he is a good play designer. And as far as play calling, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like, don't go away from something that is just killing them, and like, I hate to bring it up again, the Arizona game, he had so many instances where he flooded his zone. So in zone, you have to flood it with a multitude of routes and just layer it. And now there's so many options all right there, like high to low for Geno to go or the quarterback to go.
Be interesting to see what direction now they go in, because Mike Macdonald, I don't know if to me the hiring of Ryan Grubb screamed a John Schneider hire. That John Schneider is the one who made the call on it, like 100%. Hey, Mike, you want to go along with this one? I think he'd be great. He'd be exciting, because I'm just wondering. If they sat down and had an interview process, I'd like to know what Ryan Grubb told Mike Macdonald. Hey, are you going to call the same offense you did at Washington? Are you going to adjust to the NFL? Do you have that skill set to do so? I'm just curious how he convinced and what Ryan Grubb's vision was that night that they met at the bar and all of that. What was his vision that he sold Mike Macdonald on?
Well, I think we have to look at timing of hiring. Mike Macdonald was the last guy to be hired as a head coach. And I believe, I could be wrong, and go ahead and tell me if I am, but I believe he was the last one. John wanted his man. He went and waited for him and got him because they were in a playoff run. And, the hardest thing for a first-time head coach to do is put together a staff, right? Now you're delegating responsibility and empowering those under you to carry your message to the players. And so I don't know how many candidates there really were. That's what I'd be interested to go back and revisit, was like, who were the other candidates that he interviewed? But to put a staff together, I said that was going to be the hardest thing for a first-time, a 36-year-old head coach to put a staff together. I don't know. Mike Macdonald really impressed me this year. And,
especially when you look at all the guys that he hired, right? All first-year guys, every one of them. And you don't have that. Well, he doesn't have that tree, right? And you need that tree in the NFL. Yeah,
and I think the big hire really that I don't think anyone really talked about was Leslie Frazier being there, who was a head coach and has been in the league a long time. Leaning on him for advice of, hey, how did you navigate this problem or this situation, whether with a coach or a player, right? And so I think that was when that was the one key hiring that I pointed out. I was like, this is huge, a huge get right here.
Sorry for all the coughing. I was able to hit the mute button. I picked the wrong day to stop smoking, Lofa.
Oh, you stopped smoking?
No, I'm kidding. I don't smoke. I just like to say that.
I was going to say, I'm proud of you.
Yeah. Well, it's 2025. Everybody needs a change. Do you think by firing Ryan Grubb, and the one thing that we've learned from Mike Macdonald, and you kind of touched on it earlier, I want to revisit it. He doesn't fuck around. I mean, he doesn't. I mean, if he doesn't like something and doesn't think it works, done. They brought in those two linebackers, didn't work, get rid of them. Get rid of them. We get rid of them right now. He is willing, I think what we've learned, he is willing to pull the plug on something fast if he doesn't think it's going to work. But this will be a monumental hire for him because this will shape the direction of him as a head coach moving forward, because we saw this thing with Pete too. I know Pete, he's got a Super Bowl. He's the greatest head coach in Seahawks history. But this was kind of always an issue with Pete, right? He just recycled through offensive coordinators left and right, except for Bevel. Bevel is the longest tenured guy.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think Mike is a very, he's got the military background, so nothing's happens. He doesn't just, like on a emotional whim or anything, make a sudden decision. Like, this has probably been in the making for a little bit, and it just, the decision has to be made though, and it's a lot of responsibility being a head coach, and so and I was only an assistant coach. This is way above my pay grade, but I just I do understand the burdens of responsibility as a leader, and you have to do what's best for the team, and ultimately feels like this is the best decision moving forward for the team. And so, everyone's going to be on board with it. It's unfortunate. I feel bad for Grubb. I never wish for anybody to be fired. And so I don't understand when people, like, we're all human, and like, no one goes, if you mess up on a report at your job, no one's clamoring for you to get fired, right? You got to give them grace. Like, hopefully you learn from it and get better. But yeah, like I said, Mike's a very strategic mind, and this wasn't just the spur of the moment. So we'll see. Yeah, and I don't know who the candidates are. I don't know if there's, but it definitely got me by surprise.
Do you think then that this move though? I mean, they have a decision on Geno Smith that they need to make. I mean, they have a decision March 16th. That's the deadline for him. Because if they don't feel they want to move forward with him, they're not going to give him that. They're going to have him on the roster because he's due $16 million. Do you think this has any foreshadowing of what they view Geno as? I mean, if they retain Geno and hire they will hire another offensive coordinator. This is his third offensive coordinator in 4 years.
Yeah. And he was, I will say this much, is he was trending upwards from the time he started out 2 seasons ago when he won the comeback player of the year. He started out very slow because I feel like they didn't hand over the reins to him. Like they didn't,
Mm-hmm.
and then all of a sudden you saw him have the freedom to check, and he was doing it. And you just saw him continually trend upward. And then the next season, he got even stronger last season, right? And this season, he kind of took a step back, and you got to wonder, was it learning on another new offense and putting it into motion? I don't know. Like, we'll see, because he's going to have to do it again this year. And so that probably goes into some of what they're thinking. But I feel like they'll sit down and they'll negotiate and talk with Geno and see if something can't be done. He still has a lot of good ball left in him. It's just, can they figure it out, both sides, right?
Yeah, and I want to bring up something again, because I mentioned this earlier. When you go back to his time, Grubb's time at Washington, I mean, he clearly was more of a pass-heavy coach at Washington. And I'm not saying he wasn't at Fresno State. His last year at Fresno State, that's a great year from Jay Kaner, and Jay Kaner was fantastic that year, threw for over 4,000 yards and all that. But they threw it 39 times, they ran it 33. It was pretty balanced. I mean, they averaged almost 140 yards on the ground. They had two backs that had 700 yards plus. So there was, that's last year in Fresno. There was I watched them. They played in the bowl game against Washington State. I mean, it did not look exactly like Washington's offense. They weren't always in the shotgun. They were under center and all that. Now, again, I would go back and probably have to look at that last year at Fresno State and probably say, well, they probably had a better offensive line, at least in terms of, for that level of football and execution. Yeah. Clearly at Washington last year, I mean, he had the best offensive line in college football. I mean, they won the award for that. And so the offense will always, I don't need to tell you, will always look great when your offensive line can block.
Okay.
I'm just going to say that this is a broken record we've been talking about for almost 10 years. They're going to hire a new guy to bring a new system, and whether you bring Geno back and you got Ken Walker and Charbonnet, until they can actually fix this offensive line, I don't know who's going to come in and be some savior for this group. And I think a lot of pressure has got to be focused in on the general manager of the team. He makes a lot of money. He was given the keys to this organization. The ownership, Lofa, chose him over Pete Carroll. And that's obvious. They said, listen, we believe in you more than we believe in moving forward with Pete Carroll. He said, it's your team now. I'm not saying they're going to fire him this offseason, nor do I think they should. But he should be under a lot of pressure to fix this offensive line, because that is the number one thing. I don't need to tell you or anyone that's watching or listening to this. Everybody knows what the number one issue is, and that's it. They need to find some consistency and some people up front that can block. And until they do so, they're just going to be in the same position every year.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And but you brought up a great point there in talking about Grubb, the college game. I mean, how many great defenses do you see in college? Yeah, exactly. And guess what? When they did finally see one against Michigan in the national championship, what happened? Right? And
his defense. That's the other thing too. Let me stop you there. He saw that defense. I mean, well, it's not his defense, but because he was in Baltimore. But it is his defense because they worked so well with Mentor and all those guys that worked there. He saw that. He saw what that offense was and still went ahead, an agreement with the hire. So it's an interesting point you brought up, but go ahead and finish your thought.
No, but I was just talking about, I look at college football. I watch it. I'm watching the playoffs, and I think Ohio State and Notre Dame are the only one I saw defense out of. And that's who I think is probably going to go on, right? I thought Georgia was going to come back. They actually showed great defense, but they made a ton of mistakes, self-inflicted, that kept them from beating Notre Dame, because they were right there with 20-10, and then penalties, and then they just got outplayed, right? It happens. But the defense was very consistent from both Notre Dame and Ohio State. And that's who I fully believe is going to be in the national championship after this week of games. But, you get to the NFL, everybody got players, and then when you face the top defenses, it's like, man, if you can't run the ball and you're one-dimensional against them, it is going to be an ugly day, right? If they can play the run with 7, but I just feel like, and kind of just beating the dead horse here after that Arizona game, I think the next 2 games consecutively, I think we ran it for a total between the 2 games of like 23 times, right? I think it was like 12 here and 11 here. And it was just like, okay, it's like almost like creatures of habit. We go back, okay, we had success, and then we fall back in love with doing what we've always done, right? Stick to what we're doing, like the pulls and all that run game. And then I just saw it go away. And then it came back against Green Bay. The one play we scored on was a double pull and now that was who's the backup center, North Dakota State, Sundell, is that his name?
Sundell, yeah.
So you want to talk about, okay, shuffling guys in and out. This is a backup, undrafted rookie that was 30 yards downfield blocking. First of all, I think he's going to be a great player. But second of all, so the shuffling of the pieces were there. We just didn't call the run enough. We didn't call the counters, the pull, the trap, any of this. And I really think that's kind of what we're looking at more so than like the offensive line's terrible. Because if you got them on the heels, defense, now your pass game opens up.
What direction would you like to see them go for an offensive coordinator? Someone that has been a passing game coordinator, an assistant for one of these offenses that is getting his first time as an offensive coordinator, or go down the road of was an offensive coordinator, got a head coaching job, fired from the head coaching job, went back to being a coordinator, or is now an assistant? Do you want someone that has head coaching experience to be the coordinator?
No, I want young and hungry. I want whoever's the longest tenured guy under McVay, Shanahan, maybe McDaniel, the most productive offenses because they're the most creative. And the Lions, whoever's over there under Johnson, you've been there how long? Okay, come on over. And like copycat league, you don't have to copy it verbatim and you don't have to do it exactly like he did it. Put your own wrinkle on it, whatever. But they all run the ball, and that's what we're trying to do here. And what do I see? I see them always getting downfield with their line. Like they're not sitting at the line of scrimmage. Like when we had the offensive line that I was blessed to play with, 2 Hall of Famers, Walton Hutch, right? And then you got Pro Bowl Tobeck, Gray, and Locke. We had the line that could run any play successfully, right? Whether it was zone, whether it was power, whether it was just straight up downhill, ISO. And a lot of teams don't have that luxury, right? And so that made things very easy as a play caller. And it kind of goes hand in hand to what you're saying is like the line's the issue. Well, you need talent. You win in the trenches. The game is always won in the trenches, and everything else becomes easy off of that. So, but I see, Detroit just lost one of their tackles, one of their starters, Zeitler, right? And so I guarantee you, next man up, they'll be fine, even though he's not the player of the same caliber because of the system and what they do. And so there's a lot of teaching and the philosophy and why we're doing what we're doing. And I think, that, was actually there for Grubb. I think it was literally just came down to the decision of, all right, we're going to stick with this. We're just going to keep pounding it. And the 3rd and 1 that you talked about, you're like, why are we throwing it? Depending on where we're at in the field, that's a signal that we're going to go for it on 4th. Mike already told him, hey, we're going for it on 4th. So just open up the playbook, do whatever you want. We call it a waste down. Yes, I'm with you as a fan. I'd like to just see a first down and then we start over again.
Just get it. Run it twice.
Give me 4 more downs. Yeah. So, but in the game within the game, I was sitting there and even on the pod because I believe there was a situation. I don't know if it was that exact circumstance, but we were at 2nd one. I go, all right, take a shot, boys. Like this is where we just send DK streaking down the field and we just throw it up to him, right? I don't care if a man's on him. If he's doubled, let's not throw to him. And because then you line up on 3rd down, and then you run it again and you run it on 4th. But even the hard count, we were so successful with the hard count on the road in the early part of the season. And those are free first downs that we never got back to, and I don't know why.
What do you think in our chat, someone brought this name up. What do you think of Doug Peterson?
Oh, he's a phenomenal offensive mind.
Local guy, too.
The Jags head coach, did he get fired?
Yeah, he got fired.
See, look, I don't even know. When did this happen?
This morning.
Look at you guys giving me news.
He's and a local guy, grew up in Bellingham, so north of Seattle, a couple hours.
Yeah.
Guy that probably won't get another head coaching job right away, but would he go and kind of, find himself again as a coordinator?
Yeah, I would definitely. I mean, the expertise, that's another, soundboard for Macdonald as a head coach to bounce ideas off of and then just have a pulse, offensively of like what's going. But like, yeah, he's been great at, developing quarterbacks, right? And so I would love to see him as offense coordinator.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just going to be a really interesting hire here for Macdonald and then also for John Schneider. What do you think that they should do? We talked a little bit about the time frame that's coming up with Geno March 16th. What do you think that they should do? What do you think they will do?
I need all possibilities, variables. So he has one left on his deal, right? This next year?
Yeah. He's got a massive cap hit, $44.5 million.
Okay, so a restructuring makes sense. Is exactly where I'd go first. I mean, that's more cash up front for Geno, which he's not going to say no to. They just take the signing bonus and they give more of it up front, and that relieves some of that pressure as a cap. But realistically, I would sit down and just have an honest conversation. It's like, look, I know you probably want to play another 8 to 10 years. Because with his arm, he can, and he's not using his leg. He's a true pocket passer. Yeah. He can use his legs, but he probably didn't because of his knee. So I would just have an honest conversation of, you're our guy, and for however long that term is, I would say if it's 2 years, I would just be honest and upfront. Like, you're our guy for 2 years. What is going to make you happy for 2 years? While we do get somebody to take over, someone in line to be ready when you're gone. And we wish you well, and
Yeah, because he can't be on that number. There's just it can't financially make sense for them. They're already over the cap. They're going to make decisions. Obviously, Lockett will be a part of that. We'll see what they do with DK, but that number at $44.5 million is going to be too much for them. It's not going to work. So they're going to have to restructure something to bring that number down and then carry it over to the next season, but probably also at the same time, and they can get great with the cap. They're so great at all of that, these cap guys, to make it where probably could easily even get out of the 26 if they decide they're going to move in a different direction. But the problem with it is there's no succession plan. It certainly doesn't look like it's Sam Howell. I don't think Sam Howell hasn't done anything to say he's ready to be, taking the reins. Yeah. And so, do they address it in the draft? They pick 18th. I mean, is the guy going to be there at 18? Are they going to do something they never do under John Schneider and move up in the draft to get somebody if they find somebody in the draft that they truly like?
I don't think you have to. I mean, Russell was a 3rd round pick, and I think there's just been so much emphasis placed on, you got to find a quarterback. Well, how many have actually worked out? All right. And by the time they actually are good, now you got to pay them $50 million a year. So it's like Brock Purdy was the last pick of the draft, Mr. Irrelevant. Like, you put a great team around a guy, give him a run game, weapons, and a defense, and a lot of great things happened, which was the case with Russell. A lot of people, they forget that. He had the number 1 scoring defense for his first 4 years, and he had Marshawn Lynch. And he had 2 Pro Bowlers on the line, Unger and Russell Okung. So, like, the notion that he had no help, I don't buy that at all. And so now, what did Russ have? His intangibles. Toughness, one of the toughest guys I've ever seen. The guy had a grade 2 MCL sprain when I was a coach. He didn't miss a snap of practice. That's a guy everybody wants to fight for. He didn't even miss a practice. Like, it was amazing. And one of the hardest workers, which elevated everybody else in their work ethic. Like, so these are things that no one places any value on. They're just like, oh, he's got a rocket arm and, he's a great pocket passer. Well, the game's moving mobile. You better be a dual threat. Not that you have to run, but because if you have protection time, even the worst quarterback in the league can pick you apart. But if you don't have that or a run game, even the best quarterback's going to struggle. And so I don't believe you have to go first round. And I don't think a lot of people have been happy, because if you don't have a coordinator that can develop a quarterback, it doesn't matter what round you take the guy. You're not going to get any return out of that pick.
Let's, you think about this season, and I think you would agree with this. We talked last week. Do we think this season is a successful season? I think we all said last week it was, regardless of what was going to happen this past week. So, I mean, nothing changed. They went 10-7. It's interesting when you look at this season, 10-7, first-year coach, first-year coordinators, an offensive line in flux, and they lose the division because of a fifth tiebreaker. And they fired their offensive coordinator. I'm curious. You think they make this decision had they won one of those tiebreakers and got in the playoffs? Do you think he still makes the call to move on from Grubb?
I think he does. I think, and because this is just how I see Mike operating. Right? It's like a decision's been made. Now the timing. It's just not a decision. It's not if. It's just when it happens. And so I think he did the right thing and ran the course, right? And then just said, okay, this, now's an opportunity. And I think he did right by Grubb to hey, now, this is the hiring cycle, right? And better now than I wait a month or, later and just try to keep going back and forth. Is this the right thing? I think, he made the decision. It's time to move. And so, I hope Grubb, lands on his feet. He's got a lot. He's got a great resume, right? And even this year, it's a winning season. Geno broke, with everything withstanding, Geno broke franchise records in attempts, completions, and yards. So there's a lot, to put on that resume that he's done. So, yeah, we'll see. But this is definitely a success. This is think about it. This is the foundation. This is the standard. This is and it's only up from here in the minds of those players in the locker room and those coaches. Is if this is unacceptable, if 10-7 is unacceptable, imagine where we're going in their minds.
Well, and I would just say, again, they made the decision, and again, I said this before you came on. I'm not going to sit there and die on a hill for Ryan Grubb and be like, oh, this is the worst mistake in the history of the organization. I do think it was a mistake. I think it was too early, but again, he gets paid millions of dollars, and one thing that I do respect about Ryan, or about Macdonald, is he's willing just to sit there and make a decision, right? If he doesn't like it, he moves on, makes a change, and we'll see what he can do, what he and Schneider can do to make the right hire. But again, I look at some of the biggest games they had this year. I'm gonna take out. I'm looking at playoff teams, but I'm gonna, for this exercise, maybe it's unfair, I'm gonna take out the Broncos. Broncos, the first game of the season against a rookie quarterback. So they're not the same team. I'm gonna just take that out for now.
Yeah, they're in the playoffs now, but you're right.
Now they're in the playoffs. But this is what I do think there needs to also be a critical eye on Mike Macdonald and his defense, although I do think it made massive improvements from last year to this year. But when it came to playoff caliber teams, they failed. Really, in almost every instant. I mean, the Lions game they lost 42-29. Bills they lost. Rams they split. But I mean, they almost lost yesterday to the backups.
Yeah,
they really did. They allowed Garoppolo to march kind of at will down there on the field on them, and that would have been. I was thinking about this, Lofa. Had they lost that game, would that have been worse than the Giants game?
It would have been. Yeah. It would have been tough to stomach losing that one to all of their backups.
So
right?
so then there's the Packers game, and then there's the Vikings game. In those games combined against playoff teams with good offenses, they defensively, Mike Macdonald gave up almost 30 points a game, 29.5 points. If I took that and then put it in the stats overall for the season, that would have ranked 31st in the NFL in points given up. Total yards was 378 average in those games. That would have ranked 30th. So in those biggest games against playoff caliber teams, his defense didn't do anything.
I'm trying to think back.
They victimized mediocre offenses and got lucky in the beginning of the season for their first three opponents to face a rookie, a god-awful Patriots team, and a Dolphins team without Tua.
Yeah.
Now, again, I think it's going in the right direction. You can see things that he does, and Leonard Williams and all that. But I do. We're going to put my point is we're going to put a critical eye on everything, including Ryan Grubb, which I think is justified. I think it's also justified to put a critical eye on him as well. And when they had critical games to win, they couldn't get, his defense couldn't get stops against offenses.
That's fair. That's a fair assessment. And yeah, the Bills was the only game where we just, after that, like midway through the end of the third, we just got blown out. And that was surprising, but then to his credit and John's credit, moves were made out of that bye of the center that you paid to come in, who I said he just didn't look healthy. I think he's still a hell of a player, but then he goes and retires, and then the linebackers shuffling, getting rid of both, and then inserting a guy you had there the whole time in T Knight, a rookie, and then going and getting Ernest. So I thought that was, and there was a turning point because we climbed the ranks, finished the season after that bye week, in the top amongst the defenses. But turnovers, it's such a key stat that's overlooked. Not just giving up the ball in offense, trying to protect it, but taking it away. That is what great defenses do at alarming rates, right? And I don't think we did that enough. And that's, if there's a point of emphasis that could really take them to like the top defense that Macdonald's coached, just a year ago, it's the turnovers, the emphasis on getting the ball off of them.
Thank you so much. It was an emergency visit with you because Jim decided not to work today because he was so heartbroken over Ryan Grubb being fired. So he said, I'm not doing the show today, pound sand. You did it on a last-second notice. I kept you longer than I told you I was going to keep you. I appreciate it. You're the best. I'll send a check in the mail for overtime. I'm
going to invoice Jim. Don't worry.
All right. I still want. We'll talk later in this week, and we'll catch up with you. Thanks, Lofa. Appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate you, brother. All
right, there he is, Lofa Tatupu with us. His weekly appearance normally on Fridays, brought to you by 1937 Farms, family-owned and operated craft cannabis. A lot of people could use that today. Tucked away in Snoqualmie Valley. Visit 1937farms.com. Follow 1937 Farms on Instagram. Also, Savage Brewing Company. And check out Lofa's podcast, the All Day Podcast. Did a full live show yesterday during the game of 4 hours yesterday. Search All Day Podcast. All right, we're going to transition to the Ground Puck Seahawks Podcast. Tim Booth, Curtis Crabtree coming up. I'm probably not 15 minutes or so. They're still in the locker room getting ready. Or they're still in the locker room because it's locker room cleanout day there for the Seahawks. So they'll be just a little bit late, but we'll catch up with those guys and spend a few minutes with them and trying to get some reaction from players inside that locker room. But I'm excited. We put this together. We wanted to get our winner on from Puck the Picker, the Pigskin Pick'em that was brought to you by TroyWins.com. We've been doing this all season long. Troy, who's with us every Friday, and he's with us again here today. It was so happy that he was back with us this year, and then so appreciative that he once again decided to give away a trip for two to Las Vegas, first round of the NCAA March Madness for our contest this year, staying at the Circa Hotel, airfare covered, everything covered, dinner at Barry's. And so, and Troy didn't hesitate. He said, yeah, I'll be back. I'll give that away one more time. He's with us. He's just done dropping the kids off at school. Today's a nightmare day for any parents out there, like you, me, anyone that's got kids.
Yes.
They've been off for 2 weeks. They've been staying up late and sleeping in. And then today they had to get that wake-up call at 7:30, like, time to get up. And the real life starts again. It's a very groggy morning for many people out there, Troy.
No doubt. Thanks for having me. And yeah, crazy news with the Seahawks. And I'll be honest, I didn't see that one coming today, Puck. I didn't see that one coming.
No, not at all. All right, so we've been doing it all year long, picking games. You had to pick every NFL game against the spread. We started it in week 2. Again, all expenses paid, trip to Las Vegas on the line, staying at the Circa Hotel, dinner at Barry's, first round of the March Madness. Finishing in 5th place, we had a 3-way tie, Bryce McCoy, Jeff Shamley, and Greg McDonald. 4th place was Arv Glenn. 3rd place was Thomas Hohennessy. 2nd place, we had a 2-way tie with Jason Oldham and Alex Wrighton. And 1st place, and our winner of the 2024-2025 Puck the Picker, Pigskin Pick'em with TroyWins.com. Ladies and gentlemen, he's with us right now. Dwayne Mathis with the WWF heavyweight belt behind him. Dwayne, thank you for joining us. I know you just got done doing a work call. Hey, congratulations winning that trip to Las Vegas, Nevada, man.
Well, thanks, Puck. Thanks, Troy. I'm super excited, super appreciative that you guys did the contest and I participated, and hopefully you'll bring it back next year and we'll get way more people to sign up. It'll be a load of fun.
Yeah. Troy, thank you again for doing it. This guy was on fire. Dwayne was making picks left and right and just killing people. He started there was a deficit like in the middle of the season and then climbed all the way back. And listen, you go back and look at his picks, Troy. This might be a time you put him on the payroll.
I was going to say, put in an application. We're always hired. And if somebody's hitting 60+%, we're interested. So congratulations. Puck, get my email from Puck and we'll be sure to find the right dates for you and get you taken care of. I know last year Diane had the time of her life down there and even came back hitting some parlays. So hopefully you'll come back with some money. Make it an investment trip.
Dwayne, yes. Do you have an idea who you'd like to take with you on the trip?
Well, I'll be probably taking my wife. She works for the school district, so we had to get up early, and she had to get ready for work after 2 weeks off this week as well. But the last 3 weeks, she found out I was in the contest, and I spent the last 3 weeks explaining to her, I don't get to pick the spreads. I'm picking 18.5, but I don't get to pick that. So yeah, she'll come with me.
You ended up losing. You had a pretty good last week, and not as good as the other weeks that you had, but you hit on the Ravens, you hit on the Commanders, you had the Packers. No, you missed on the Packers because the Bears ended up winning that one. You hit on the Texans, you hit on also the Eagles, and then you hit also on the Chargers, and then the Seahawks ended up, I think it was the Seahawks and then the Cardinals. Those wins ended up giving you the victory. So you're taking your wife. That's good. Troy. That's a good decision there by Dwayne, right? Take happy wife, happy life, right?
Yeah, what happens in Vegas stays there, Dwayne. So if you've got a buddy that you could go down there with, I'll take my wife every once in a while. When it comes, when we're gonna do shows and dinners and stuff, I'll take the wife.
Yeah.
I'm gambling
March
all day long.
Madness, I don't know. Yeah.
She better be a basketball fan. Let's just say that. That's a long day.
Yeah, Dwayne, is she gonna let you sit in the sports book all day watching basketball? Or does she want to sit at the pool and go to shows? I think Troy makes a great point.
At Circa, I'll be in the pool watching sports on all those big screens. But
yes.
if she can't go, then I'll probably take my brother. We've gone to Vegas. A lot of guys trips down there. A lot of sports betting. So
yeah,
I'll sit there and make crazy parlays.
What, Troy, and then you got dinner at Barry's. What's the Barry's experience like, Troy? What is Dwayne in store for there at the Barry's Steakhouse?
Great spot. It's at the very bottom. It's kind of old school, kind of that 1970s, 1960s Sinatra vibe. Barry himself is typically always there. So he's walking around talking to all the tables. I highly recommend looking it up on Instagram. They've got some cool stuff. You can almost guarantee you're going to see a celebrity of some sort, but steaks outstanding. Desserts are fantastic there. And it's a great, Sinatra ambiance, a lot of fun. And like I said, Barry's there and typically puts his hand on every table, make sure he says hello to everybody that's in the house.
See, that's what you got to look forward to, Dwayne. Hey, did you have a strategy at all, or you just pick the games, got a kind of gut reaction each week?
When I started putting strategy into it, that's when I started having some bad weeks. I was like, I'm just going to go with the gut and roll with it. But I've entered these contests twice before. The first one was years ago with the News Tribune, and I won that contest as well. And I got a $50 gift card and my name in the paper. So this is a little bit better of a prize.
It's just a slightly better. Yeah, well, I can't wait to see you and the wife. Circa Hotel pool. That is unbelievable. Troy sends me pictures of that place, and it pisses me off every time that we're not down there. I've never seen anything like that. If no one's ever seen it, look at the Circa Hotel, sports bar, pool, outdoors. Right. It's probably, Troy, you would say it's like the greatest thing ever invented.
It is. And, they even have a place in that hotel. It's called the Mega Bar, which, again, look that up. It's about 190 TVs that just line across. And what's actually fantastic, my favorite thing about the Circa is you can get a Coors Light for $5. You can get a vodka soda for $6. You're not spending the Vegas prices of $25 for a cocktail. So it's a great experience. It's wide open. You can always get a seat. It's a great experience there.
All right, Troy. First with you. Thank you so much for doing it again. I know we'll catch up later this week, but thank you. You've been great to me, especially going in this new venture, but great relationship throughout the year. So thank you for doing the contest. Appreciate the support. Go visit TroyWins.com. He's got great deals up there. You can do a better job of selling it than me, but if you want gambling advice, TroyWins.com is the spot.
Yeah, thanks, Puck. Looking forward to it. Hope we can do it again next year. Congrats, Dwayne. I got to ask you before you go, Dwayne, who's your favorite WWF wrestler all time? You're talking to the biggest Shawn Michaels fan of all time.
I like The Rock, man. It goes right back to The Rock.
The Rock. I love The Rock.
You guys are such a younger Dwayne, how old are you?
I'm 40. I'm a man. I'm 40.
Okay, and Troy, you're what? You're
37. 37.
Yeah, you guys are much younger. I'm 49. You get much younger than me. I mean, I never watched Rock or Shawn Michaels. I mean, the answer is Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Always will be, and he's the greatest of all time. Troy, thank you again. Dwayne, congratulations, man. Have a blast. We'll put you two in contact off the air. And can't wait to see the pictures and hear back from you once you go on the trip. Dwayne, thanks for doing it, and thanks for being a part of the contest.
Appreciate it, guys.
All right,
Thanks,
there he is, Dwayne Mathis, our 2024 Puck the Picker, Pigskin Pick'em, and of course, Troy West from TroyWins.com. Troy, appreciate it. We'll talk later this week. Thank you.
Thank you, Puck. Have a good one.
Yeah, you as well. There he is. Troy, it's TroyWins.com is the website. Go there, get all the top gambling advice that you can. From Troy himself. And again, congratulations to Dwayne. And next year we'll do it again. Puck the Picker, the Pigskin Pick'em, and hopefully we'll do a trip again there to Vegas for the NCAA March Madness. All right, Tim and Curtis from the Ground Puck Podcast. They'll be with us here momentarily. They're still in the locker room. Clean out day there for the Seahawks, getting a reaction, obviously, from all the players inside. And we thought we'd just be talking about the end of the season, going 10-7. What's the reaction to that? But now, obviously, with the news today that came out right before we jumped on the air at 10 o'clock, is that Ryan Grubb is out as the offensive coordinator of the Seattle Seahawks after just 1 year. And again, this doesn't mean that it's the wrong decision. Pete Carroll fired Jeremy Bates after 1 year. Realized that not the guy moved in a different direction. And when they moved in a different direction, that was the right guy until he was not the right guy. And then they moved on from Bevel. But, Pete Carroll made a similar choice. They didn't feel it was the right system for him and what they wanted to execute. And clearly that was the right decision there at the time for him, because they went on to go win a Super Bowl and had this unprecedented success. As much as they wanted, it is funny, as much as they wanted to kind of be different from the Pete Carroll era, they really are just the same team. It's just a different version. It's a younger version. I mean, Mike Macdonald is just a younger version of Pete Carroll, because it's the same philosophies when you think about it. It's a head coach who is a defensive-minded head coach first and foremost, wants to turn over the ball, but then on offense has an identity of how they want to do things. Run the ball, control the clock, having the defense and the offense mirror each other and work together. And he just evaluated this year with Ryan Grubb, and his offensive philosophy of a pass first and trying to score as many points didn't line up with how Mike Macdonald wanted to call his defense. Again, I go back to the interviewing process, and I'm just wondering how did Ryan Grubb convince him? And maybe he said, no, I'll adapt to be more run first. I don't know. Maybe that's all it took for Mike Macdonald. Again, said it earlier. It's obvious that the decision to hire him was a decision made by John Schneider. There was a John Schneider hire because Mike Macdonald there was no relationship. Macdonald had no previous interactions at all with Ryan Grubb. Grubb obviously being in the backyard with John Schneider because of what he did for the past 2 years. I mean, he watched that up close and personal and saw all the, exciting offense. I wonder, thinking back on it, and we'll have so many months to kind of detail this. When they hired him, did they have the thought when they hired him that they were going to move up and get Michael Penix? That part of the reason that they got him was because of that. I don't know. We'll never know. All right, let's head to the VMAC. I believe they're doing this together because they just got out of the locker room.
It goes through this.
Okay, I'll switch and I'll pop on mine.
Do you guys want to jump on now, or do you want me to put you back?
Hold on, we got some technical difficulties here.
Okay, I will put you back. You give me the thumbs up when you guys are ready.
We can't hear you.
Oh, perfect.
We know you can hear us, but we can't hear you.
Okay.
So that's kind of a problem as we're doing something like this. So
I know how to fix it. Give us
Curtis is now. So we're going to have 2 laptops and 2 Zooms and all sorts of shit going on here.
Okay, we'll put you back. I'm going to put them back in the green room, and I'm going to tell them to give me a thumbs up when you are ready. And we'll see if we can piece this together. But going back to my thought there, did they think at the time they hired those two that the plan was, I'm just curious, only they will know, would they want to go, or did they think that the idea was to go up and get Michael Penix? Or did they think at the time that Michael Penix was going to fall to them? Did they think that Michael Penix would be there where they were at? Or certainly maybe be in a more of a striking distance for them? And were they then surprised when Penix went as high as he did? All right, I've been given the thumbs up. Let's see if this works. Tim, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, Curtis Crabtree, are we just sharing the same microphone?
Yes.
Okay. Or is Curtis, are you going to be on your own one with Tim in the shot?
Okay, yeah, I'll get there.
Uh-oh. Now Curtis.
I'll get there.
Curtis says he will get there. We could just like tilt it so that I'm at one end of the table.
You can just share. You can just share the microphone, and this is the beauty of live. What I like to call live performance theater.
It's that kind of day, is what it is.
Well,
really.
it's got to be that kind of day. I mean, you thought you were going in there to interview players. Hey, the disappointing season, 10-7. Probably, I don't know if you had on your radar that this would happen. How much did this surprise you that Ryan Grubb, Tim, was fired?
I mean, I think it was the kind of thing that was sticking in the back of everybody's mind. That obviously it was a possibility, but I also think there was the reality that you didn't expect a 1-year experiment, that you were at least going to give him the opportunity to make adjustments and to have that chance to move forward from what this year was and try and, piece together what the future could hold or could be for that offense. So I think initially there was surprise. That's feedback. But overall, I think I can see why they did it, I guess is probably the best way to say it. But yeah, it was absolutely surprising at first, as you're driving to the VMAC this morning thinking, oh, it's just going to be like, how does 10 wins and not making the playoffs feel? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, the day has changed a little bit.
What was the players' reaction? Who did you get to speak to offensively inside that locker room?
Well, it doesn't help when the quarterback and two of the wide receivers and a couple of the running backs all just choose to walk through or not even show up in the locker room during the hour that we were there. The only, Kenneth Walker declined to talk, DK declined to talk. Geno, we never saw him, which is disappointing on a couple of aspects. One, the Seahawks need to make him come in and talk in that kind of situation. But two, Geno's a veteran. He should understand that after he comes out and makes the statements that he made yesterday in support of Grubb, that, yeah, it's obviously disappointing and shocking and whatever, but you got to come in and say something. And he's a veteran. He knows that if he wants to be the leader of this team in that way, he should understand that responsibility that he has to come in and do that. So the fact we didn't have him come in, I think, was probably the most disappointing part of who is. Offensive linemen were great. Those guys were in there willing to talk. Abe Lucas, Charles Cross, Lakin Tomlinson, all those guys were happy to talk about things. But it was more kind of the star players that weren't in there that was kind of like, come on, guys. This situation is what it is. You got to come in and say something.
What was the reaction from the offensive linemen? What, surprised, disappointed?
Business it's a business. That seemed to be the general thought. Or feeling from guys. Tomlinson said that. Abe, made reference to that. Essentially that, look, it's the nature of the game. You don't have the kind of success that you're expecting to have or hoping to have. This kind of change is going to take place. This kind of thing is going to happen. So more, it's pretty matter of fact about it. I did find it interesting that it seemed like most guys found out what happened. Via social media, which is just the way things work these days. It wasn't, a message through their team chat or anything like that. It was, what popped up on X this morning and the firestorm that followed from that. So I don't know if it was necessarily something that caught anybody off guard. That doesn't seem to be the reaction of surprise what happened, but more just like, yeah, it's the nature of what happens in this kind of profession when things don't go as you expect.
Can you just turn and ask Curtis if he was surprised by the firing of Ryan Grubb?
Curtis, were you surprised by the firing of Ryan Grubb this morning?
Yes and no. I'm working on it, Puck. Give me a second.
It's okay.
Computer is literally trying to restart right now, so it's
Hey, I'm happy to pass on messages.
Yeah, Tim's my translator.
I figured there would be a change with the offensive coaching staff. It's in some regard. I didn't know if it would be Grubb specifically, but when they've had the fifth worst rushing attack in football the last 2 years, of course, Grubb's not a part of last year, but they have to get better there. And while some of it is the functionality of the run game that they had, I also don't think they tried to run it enough in certain situations. And, I think in some ways it ends up being pretty similar to the time where Pete Carroll and Brian Schottenheimer changed, went their separate ways, where philosophically they're not on the same page together about where this offense needs to go. And I think that's why you get to the point of them making this change the way that they did. I know I had 6-7 weeks ago, I had somebody in the front office express some frustration with me about it being a college run game. I do think that they were better down the stretch with Satoa Lomea in the lineup at right guard than what they had been prior to that. And Abe Lucas coming back certainly helped a little bit as well. But yeah, ultimately, they need to have a more balanced offense than they did. Because look at Geno's numbers in 2020. 30 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. The efficiency was way more. That was the year, he made the Pro Bowl outright in his first year as a starter. And trying to lift up a bottom 5 rushing games 2 years in a row to where there's not the balance there. And the defense had its struggles for the first half of this season too. Like, if you bring Geno back as the quarterback of this team, which I still think is the most highly likely scenario that they have to give him more help with balance on offense, so that it's not this heavily skewed to the passing game needing to do everything for them in order to move the football.
Tim, ask Curtis what direction they should go in with their next offensive coordinator, a veteran or an up-and-comer?
Jason from Ballard would like to know that, or would like to ask you for their next offensive coordinator, what direction do you think they should go? Someone who's got a veteran experience as an OC, or someone who's more of a younger up and comer?
I think they will go veteran offensive coordinator for sure, because you just did the inexperienced one this year with Ryan Grubb at the NFL level, at least. And I think they clearly want to have a different focus. What I thought that they would do, and we talked about it a few weeks ago, was that I thought they might bring Grubb back, but then bring in a run game coordinator to get some sort of a pro game style rushing attack, built into the passing game, the attack that Grubb had. And so that's why I was kind of thinking that they might do it that way. But yeah, I think you're going to see an offense coordinator that's more intent on trying to run the football to be a part of this conversation to get them to the level that they want to be.
For those who don't know, Curtis can obviously the microphone, but he can't hear. Only Tim can hear because they're in a small booth there at the VMAC. They just got done from the locker room interviewing players. Curtis is trying to get his to work, but that's okay. So Tim is going to be my translator. He's going to be my translator there for Curtis. Tim, for you, do you echo those that same thought there from Curtis? They need to go like a veteran type. A name that's going to float around will be Doug Peterson, who was just fired today from Jacksonville. I'm not saying Doug Peterson specifically, but something like that for their new coordinator. Someone that has previous coaching experience, previous coordinator experience, and maybe even being a head coach in the league.
I mean, it would make a lot of sense. Absolutely. And, Doug Peterson obviously has a local connection being from Ferndale. And not that you have to have a local connection, but, I mean, it doesn't necessarily hurt. If that was a road they wanted to go down. I think if they go younger, it's going to have to be someone who's got a connection with Macdonald, someone that he worked with in Baltimore, or someone that he maybe worked with in Michigan. I don't see him after this experience going with someone that he doesn't have a history with. And that's not a knock on Ryan Grubb per se, but he, both parties in this endeavor took a flyer on things. Like, Grubb had never coordinated at this level. I think maybe he realized along the way that he's best suited to be a great college coordinator. And Macdonald took a flyer on him saying, let's give this guy his chance because of the success he had at college. And guess what? Not all of it translated quite as well. So my gut feeling would be that they go the road of a veteran guy. A Doug Peterson would make a lot of sense just in terms of the profile of someone who's got that kind of experience. But if they go younger, it's got my hunch is that it will be someone from Macdonald's background, someone that he worked with previously, that he knows, has the mind and has the similar philosophy for how he wants to run an offense to what Macdonald is thinking. Because clearly there was some sort of disconnect there this season from what Macdonald thought he was getting and what Grubb brought to the table, that obviously led to this move being made.
Okay, Tim, I'm going to ask you this first, and then you can just tell Curtis to respond. Just tell him it's about Geno. Do you think he'll be back, and what deal? So I'll ask you first. What type of deal you think he'll come back, and what type of deal do you think Seattle gives him?
I think if you're not bringing Geno back, you're kind of rebuilding in a way. I mean, you know that Tyler Lockett's not coming back, at least at the number that he probably, not the number that he's on the books for, and not at the number he probably thinks he should get. So let's put that out there that, yeah, he's probably not back. Noah Fant's probably not back. You're having to still piece together what the offensive line is. If you move on from Geno after this season and you're not putting something together so he has the certainty of at least 1 or 2 more years after this, then you're probably going into some sort of offensive rebuild. And I don't know if that's what they want to do coming off a 10-win season when, you ended up essentially tying for the division title, just, had a crappy streak of victory. So my gut feeling is he'll be back, and you're probably looking, I don't know, a 2-year extension where the total value of it is, I don't know, $35 million a year, something like that. That to me seems like a fair number. I don't know if the market will deem that a fair number for him, but I think that's probably what the end game will be, is that somehow he's on a 1 or 2 year extension that gives him the certainty of a couple more years. He gets a decent payday. The money's very front loaded so that they can get out of it after 1 or 2 years. And that's the way that they go. So now turning to Curtis.
I heard it.
He read lips. Go ahead.
So on the Geno question, I think it will ultimately land closer to $40 million a year for Geno's contract. If you look at the comparable contracts for quarterbacks on overthecap.com, there's going to be a lot of quarterbacks making more than that even that Geno can look at and legitimately, objectively say, I'm better than him, and him, who are going to be making north of $40 million a year. Now, the thing that those guys have is that they're younger than Geno is. And so that's going to be one thing that works against him on that front. But so I think somewhere around a 2-year, $40 million per extension with some incentive laden, that's around the number I think makes sense to where a contract would land for Geno, because I do think there would be interest for him on the market if he was able to get there. Like, look at his, I think I might have mentioned this last week or a couple weeks ago, the numbers that he has playing as an indoor quarterback in this league in dome games. Like, if he played for the Raiders or the Saints or something, teams that need quarterbacks in indoor environments, like, he might be able to put up some really big numbers in a situation like that if you get the right situation around him. But I think it's still for both the Seahawks and for Geno, I think the best situation for both of them still involves each other for the short-term future here. Of course, they're going to need to find a plan for a quarterback down the line. I don't think there's great options in this year's draft. And I don't know that there is a quarterback that they're going to be able to get available on the free agent market outside of Geno this year that's going to, keep them in this kind of window where they're close enough to competing next year moving forward.
Tim, when it comes to the discussion or the topic around DK Metcalf, he'll enter next year, the final year of his contract. Normally, this is when you're going to do an extension of some sort. What direction do you think this organization goes in regards to DK Metcalf?
I think he's back, especially if you're not bringing Tyler back at $31 million or whatever exactly his cap number is. You can absorb what DK's cap number is for next year. So I don't, kind of the same thing. I don't, unless you're deciding to go and rebuild the whole thing and you want to refocus who you are and what you are offensively entirely, I don't see a reason to move on from him at this point. You're not going to get, if you wanted to trade him, you're not going to get great trade value for it. You're going to have, minimal savings against the cap. You'll save, maybe 10 million, but overall, like, is that worth not having that guy on the field? I think you bring him back again, unless you're going to bring in an offensive coordinator who wants to tear the whole thing down and bring in a new quarterback, revamp the run game, revamp the offensive line, and decide that we're going to build everything around JSN and DK doesn't need to be a part of that. Okay, that's a different conversation, and I think then you could bring up the idea of that. But you're in theory taking a step back from being one game away from making the postseason. So I see them bringing him back. Whether an extension happens, I don't know, because there's a lot of reason why you could argue against doing an extension at this point with DK. And if you do, because he's going to want elite wide receiver money, and he's not your number one option. And that was proven this year. JSN is your number one option. He is your guy moving into the future. He had 100 catches. He's the guy. You need DK there, I think, to make this offense work at its best as the complement to that. But DK also knows that this is one of his last chances to, whenever the time comes, to get paid like a number one. And so he's going to want number one receiver money, even if he isn't the number one guy for where you are right now. So that's going to be an interesting little stalemate there as to how they want to approach that situation with him, because you're right. He's going to come to them and say, hey, I want my deal, extended out for a couple more years. But in the big picture, I think he's back next year.
I'll play the counterpoint just for the sake of it, in that Jackson just completed year 2, right, of his contract. So he'll be eligible for an extension starting after next season as well, to where if Jackson puts up let's say an even better contract, a better season next year for them, you're looking at possibly needing to pay 2 receivers over $30 million a year after next season. It doesn't seem like you can do that, just from a roster construction standpoint. So of the 2, which one do you want to commit to for the longer term? It's the same argument working against Geno, is that, DK is the older receiver of those 2. to where, if Tyler's no longer here, which I think even he believes is probably not going to be the case next year, and you're resetting the roster a little bit. Like if you decided to move DK, maybe you don't get the massive draft pick value back in return for him, but you get the eventual contract savings on that front to then rebuild the roster in a different way, to where maybe you do put more funds to the offensive line. And think of how good the receivers coming out of college almost on a yearly basis are nowadays. Like, it is one of the positions you can more readily get guys ready to play every single year coming out of college than some others, like offensive line, for instance. That's a much tougher road to go with. So, playing devil's advocate of that argument, there is a path that makes sense of trading DK and finding a different way to go down the road too. That doesn't mean DK is not worth it or a good receiver in his own right. It's purely a base. How do you want to build this roster moving forward, and what makes the most sense? And I think that is one that's a legitimate question this offseason.
And just to wrap up, especially if you have a head coach that wants to make another philosophical change on what he wants his offense to look like, right? He wants a run-first offense, physical linemen running the ball. Now, does it make sense? You're paying a ton of money to the quarterback. You're going to pay a ton of money to 2 wide receivers. Well, that doesn't seem to make sense if you want to be a run-first team. So, God, I feel like we've been having this damn conversation for 10 years. The same conversation we had when Pete Carroll was here. And we're talking about Russell Wilson and paying all these other guys. So it's fascinating how it comes full circle. Thank you for doing the show, sharing the headphones together. I know it's a busy day. You carved out time for us, so we appreciate it. We'll get back to a normal schedule next week to kind of put the finishing touches there on the season. But I know you guys got a lot of work to do, writing all the stories of everything that you guys talked to all the players inside the VMAC facility. Catch all of Tim's work up, seattletimes.com, and then also Curtis's work at fox13.com. They'll have all the stories from today from inside the locker room, both up on those websites. Boys, appreciate it. We'll talk to you next week.
See you, Puck.
See you, Puck.
All right, there they are. Tim Booth, Seattle Times. Follow him there. Go to seattletimes.com. And then also Curtis Crabtree, who's not only doing fox13.com, but also doing the Washington Sports Wrap-Up show that he does with Aaron Levine and Alyssa Charleston. All right. Wow, a busy day. A busy day. Did not think that the Ryan Grubb would get fired. Thought they would give Ryan Grubb one more year, but they ultimately decided it wasn't for him and didn't fit his philosophy. And here's the thing. If you trust Mike Macdonald, and they obviously do, they made the hire, did John Schneider. And if he wanted to make a change, you got to let him make a change. And I guess you could say for John Schneider, who I think we all believe is the one who made the hire of Ryan Grubb, that he entrusted his head coach, who that was the first hire to make, that we got to get a head coach. Do you want him? And he said, no. All right, your call. Let's move on. Let's pivot. I do have respect for anyone in any type of business that is willing to quickly pivot off something if it doesn't work. There's no use in sticking with something if you say to yourself, not going to work for me. And why continue to do it one more year? Thing is they got to get it right. And we just keep doing this every year with this organization for the last decade, every single year, or almost every other year. And again, they have the same situation that they had with Pete Carroll, defensive-minded head coach who now, after 1 year, can't find an offensive coordinator. And they better find someone they can mirror up with that can have some longevity and some consistency here in the next few years, so you're not going through this same song and dance every year or two, because that's the trend that they've been in for the last decade. It's one of the reasons why they haven't been back to the Super Bowl. I mean, the defenses took a step back, but not having the continuity on the offensive side of the ball, of having the two sides line up and mirror each other. And then the other biggest thing, and the elephant in the room, is you have a general manager who has not solved the offensive line. And at some point, if they, whoever they hire that comes in, and a year from now, if we're talking about the same issues, God, they can't run the ball. They got to run the ball more. It no longer becomes the head coach, no longer becomes the coordinator you brought in. It becomes the issue of the man putting the team together. He has done wonderful things for this organization. Built a Super Bowl championship team, has made them relevant for since he's been here, every year, but has failed for a decade, his entire staff, of putting together an offensive line. Football is, sports are really all simple. We make them too complicated all the time, and you've heard me say that a million times. And football is one of them. The teams with good offensive lines are going to be there at the end, unless they have some unworldly quarterback like Patrick Mahomes. You have to dominate on the offensive line. And the teams that dominate on the offensive line are going to be there in the end. It was true 50 years ago. It's true now. And 50 years from now, when they're playing football on the moon, it's going to be, or probably Mars, it's going to be the same then. You have to have guys up front that can block. And until they can spend this offseason figuring that out, and if they have the same issues next year, same problems. I don't care who the offensive coordinator is going to be. All right, let's wrap up today's very newsy show with Hey What the Puck. Brought to you by Restoration One of North Seattle, your restoration company that lets you avoid the stress of water, fire, and mold damage with their property restoration services. Locally owned and operated. Make them your first call when those damages do affect your residential or commercial property. Phone number 206-817-8917. Visit them online at restoration1.com, the North Seattle franchise. Tell them Puck sent you. And you'll probably get a discount if you say Go Lions and ask for Derek. We're asked for Trent because he's the one who runs everything, but then throw in a Go Lions for Derek because he's a Lions fan, a big win, and of course they're now in position to run to the Super Bowl. This is some sad news, and I'll try to get through this without choking up as much as possible. And this was a post that came on X last night from Steve Gleason, and it reads as the following in case people did not see this. This past year, I actually can probably share this for you so you can see it for yourself. And a message from Steve, who is one of the most remarkable human beings that we have. Steve wrote yesterday, this past year has been filled with waves of sorrow and loss as well as joy and flourishing. We published my book, A Life Impossible, in April. Then I was honored with the Arthur Ashe ESPY this summer. During the writing process, I lost the ability to blink. It's been fucking brutal. My world of productivity and communicating with people I love has collapsed. For people that don't know, because Steve cannot speak, he communicates via computer by his eyes, being able to, the technology, I think it's Microsoft, the technology that he uses to write posts with his eyes. It's been 14 years today since my diagnosis, and if I've learned anything in these past years, it's that like the eye of the hurricane, within sorrow, there is serenity. Within loss, there is a lesson to learn. Today, I woke up and watched the sunrise alone, had lunch in the Shire of Lake Vista, and watched the sunset with the family. Keep showing up, friends, no matter how brutal or tragic our loss may be. It seems the lesson is love, and let us be loved. Peace to you, friends, and peace on earth. Said this a million times. I think Steve Gleason is one of the greatest human beings I've ever come across. I think in terms of humanity, I think in terms of self-deprecation, self-deprecating humor, I think an outlook on life, perspective on life, perspective in a situation like Steve has been in. I don't think there's has been a greater example of human spirit that I have ever seen than Steve Gleason. Life expectancy of someone that's diagnosed with ALS, anywhere from 2 to 5 years. He survived 14 years. He has survived 14 years because of an army of people behind him. He has survived, though, 14 years because of a mindset and a belief in the human spirit and the belief in himself that he has had. And I don't know, it's not tragic what has happened to him and his ability to lose his communication, because I think we should all just sit back and everything is swirling in our lives and everybody is angry all the time now and upset. I want everybody to take a step back, read that post, read all the number of posts that Steve Gleason has ever put together, and just understand this and just ask yourself, how can I be a better person today? How can I have a better outlook on life today like Steve Gleason? Because many of you watching and listening to this right now are not in the circumstance that Steve Gleason has, but it's not to minimize whatever your difficult situation is. That's Steve's. And to see how he has managed this for 14 years, his outlook on life, and there has been bad times, obviously, for him, but it's never soured his desire to embrace life and fun. And that's always been my biggest takeaway with Steve Gleason. If you have never watched his documentary, it is inspiring. It is sad, and you will cry, but you will come away. And I would encourage everyone to watch it. He just details his whole life going through the process of being diagnosed, and then ultimately where he is now. Watch it. Steve Gleason is again probably the most inspiring human I have ever come across. So, just thoughts go out to Steve and his family, and I hope he continues being able to be on this journey of life, because he's been a hell of a pleasure to watch from afar. All right, that's it for Hey What the Puck. Again, brought to you by Restoration One of North Seattle. Contact them at 206-817-8917. Visit them online, restoration1.com, North Seattle franchise. Full episode of the Daily Puck Drop on this Monday edition, January 6th, will be up on YouTube later. The full show up there. When you're there, please like the show. Please subscribe more than anything. Just don't watch it. Subscribe. And then also the full audio version will be up on Apple and Spotify, your favorite podcast platforms. And, of course, we do everything up there at PuckSports.com. Also, when you're up at PuckSports.com, sign up today, $5 a month. Please join, become a Pucks Posse member. You get everything. Full VIP content of everything that we do here at the Daily Puck Drop every single day, all of our guests, and of course VIP access and content that we do there as well. It's a VIP content, but it's also supporting this venture of PuckSports.com as we start in another year of it in 2025. All right, we'll see you tomorrow, Tuesday edition. We'll talk to John Canzano. Also, Danny Kelly stops on by to get his reaction to everything that happened today in the Seahawks world. Until then, we'll talk to you tomorrow. As always, we promise to be better.
No shoes, no dice.
Would anybody like to smoke some pot?
Yeah.
I was born to love you. I was born to lick your face. I was born to rob you. But you were born to rub me first.
What do you need my address for?
We'd like to send out a mailer.
Mother of mercy, I don't speak Japanese!